Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be having a look at Hammer horror film tie-ins in vintage paperbacks. There's quite a lot of these. I don't have them all, but I've got a fair chunk of them. And even the ones I haven't got, I'll be able to show you pictures and stuff anyway. So that is the focus of today's video. These books are absolutely great and certainly quite a nice part of my movie tie-in collection. So without further ado then, do please sit back, relax, and let's get to it. So, my love affair of Hammer films and the tie-in novels that they spawned harks back to the late 1970s. So, nearing the end of my years at primary school, I remember watching the late night horror double bills on a Saturday night on BBC Two, although I would usually fall asleep before the second one had started. I do distinctly remember watching the 1967 classic Quatermass and the Pit and absolutely loving it. The eeriness around the Hobbs End setting and the familiarity of the London Underground resonated with me, and I never really forgot it. I vaguely remember my school library having an old Penguin copy of Quatermass in its library, and lo and behold, when I checked, it was indeed Quatermass and the Pit by Nigel Kneale. Now, upon closer inspection, I realised that this was actually the script from the BBC TV series, and not really an adaptation of the film that I'd seen. So still, I was impressed and promptly got through it in a day. And there began my love affair with TV and movie tie-ins, along with a cartload of Doctor Who Target books as well. And over the next 25 years or so, I'd add to the collection every opportunity that I got. Since the advent of buying books online, certain elusive Hammer titles have become much more available, and others even more highly sought after and coveted. However, some of these are just never seen. So later UK editions published by Spear with their predominantly black covers are notorious for finding at all, let alone in decent condition. Now, I've certainly not got all the Hammer related titles which follow. I know they're out there, but I love the thrill of the hunt, and finding a scarce tie-in book in the wild in that out of the way second-hand bookshop is still a fantastic feeling. So with Hammer predominantly, it was their famous horror movies which usually got the tie-in treatment. However, some of their other endeavours, such as the war film The Camp on Blood Island, were published as TV and movie tie-ins. Now, if the movies prove popular, then these will be listed as well for the sake of completeness. So many of Hammer's early movies were based on contemporary fiction and crime novels, but after much research, I can't find a single one of these that was actually received the movie tie-in treatment. Even those first couple of Quatermass movies were only published as tie-ins to the BBC TV series by Penguin Books, and they didn't actually have a film tie-in version. So what follows, I believe, is a comprehensive listing of all the Hammer film related tie-in paperback novels as published in the UK and the USA. So the publisher, the date, the cover artist and series number are also listed if I know them, along with a brief note about how easy it will be to get yourself a copy of these. So putting a collection of these together is certainly not an easy task. They don't even look very uniform on the shelf. However, it is a task that if you do stick at it, you've got some absolutely classic movies in tie-in form, and you'll be very much rewarded if you do manage to track some of these down. So in chronological Hammer film released order, we start with The Curse of Frankenstein. Now, as you'll see, this was actually part of a 4-book adaptation by John Burke, which was published by Pan Books in the UK in 1964. However, the movie first came out in 1957, so there's years you've had to wait until the actual film was adapted, and this is part of 4, which we'll come across in a minute. So that was where that first film, the Curse of Frankenstein, was adapted. Now, the next one is far more common, so I'm just going to put that to one side because I'm going to need that again. The next is probably the most common one of all, and that's The Camp on Blood Island. So this is one of their slightly controversial these days film tie-in books, and it's J.M. White and Val Guest, based on their screenplay. This was published by Panther, and number 805 in their series. Got that still on the back there. And this is probably the easiest Hammer film tie-in book to find, usually with that cover, although it was reissued in 1971 with a new cover. And that's this one here, once again by Panther. So that's like the slightly later edition of that one. The next one we've got is Dracula from 1956. Now this was released in the USA as The Horror of Dracula and was published by Perma Books over there, M40AA. Now this has got a photo cover which depicts Christopher Lee as Dracula above a victim. Now this is highly prized and a very sought after and expensive tie-in book, so don't expect to get one of these cheap. The next one we've got, also from 1958, is The Revenge of Frankenstein. So this is based on the screenplay by Jimmy Sangster, and this is the Panther book edition, 839, as published in, let's have a look, I believe this is also 1958? Yeah, as published in 1958. This is also a particularly sought after movie tie-in. I've had 2 copies. I've been lucky enough to have 2 copies. This is the best one that I've managed to keep, and this one's got a crease down the spine there. Down the front cover, but a real rarity, that one. If you can get it, well, fantastic. Now, unusually, this was also adapted once again in this one here, which is The Revenge of Frankenstein. So you see, they did Curse of Frankenstein and they also did Revenge of Frankenstein. So this is the same movie adaptation, completely rewritten by John Burke. So 2 adaptations of the same film, a few years apart, 1958, this was 1964, but just for the sake, 1966 rather, but for the sake of completeness, they're there. All right. Now the next one was not a horror one, but it was The Man Who Could Cheat Death. By John Sanson, and this was published by Ace Books in the UK as H240 with a nice painted cover, and a year later, same year, 1959, by Avon Books in the USA, Avon Books 362, with a photo cover. Now both these editions are very scarce, but the USA Avon edition seems to be literally impossible to find. I even struggled to find a picture of it, but it does exist out there. Now 1959 as well, another Hammer war book, which was Yesterday's Enemy. Now this is by, I can't really even pronounce his name, Morris Moiswich, based on the play by Peter Newman. This was published by Corgi Books, hence the much shorter size. And it was number SB733. This is relatively easy to find. It's got that photo on the front cover and on the back. If you've never seen the film, it is actually recommended. Great cast there, Leo McKern and Gordon Jackson, Stanley Baker. Basically, these guys get, they're in Burma, and the British soldiers, and they basically get deserted, and the enemy is slowly but surely closing in on them. It's really edgy stuff, this one, and it actually comes recommended, that. Also 1959, but one I don't have, and that's The Stranglers of Bombay. Now, this is by Stuart James and was published by Monarch Books in the States. It's got a photo cover. It's Monarch Books MM601. Now this is once again a really scarce American paperback, so don't expect to find one of these anytime soon. But if you do find one, you're going to have to pay a few pounds for it because it's quite expensive. All right. Next one is The Brides of Dracula. So this is another Monarch Books one, MM602. Came out the very next book in the series. A beautiful painted cover, this one, and copies are available online. So you can find this, but it's expensive again, so just bear that in mind if you want to track one of these down. Now the next one, I'm a bit disappointed that I've never managed to find one, and that's The Terror of the Tongs by Jimmy Sangster, and that was a digit book. Now I collect digit books, and I've got maybe 200 or 300 different digit books, but not this one. So it's Digit UK R560. It's got a painted cover, and it's really tough to find, and I think the last one I saw was £35. I thought, I'm not paying that for it, so that's why I've not got it. Now 1962 came with The Phantom of the Opera. That was published in America by Popular Library, the Popular Library PC 1020. It's got a photo cover which shows Herbert Long, and that's also very scarce and rarely seen for sale, so another toughie that you might struggle to find. Now 1964 was The Gorgon, and this was once again the first book in this 4-movie adaptation by John Burke. All right, and that's from 1966. 1964 was The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. And that was also part of this Hammer Horror Omnibus by John Burke, so 1966. Now, 1965, we have The Nanny, which was that slightly odd Hammer movie with Betty Davis in. Now, this is published by Fontana Books. I guess they had the rights to it, and written by Evelyn Piper. And it's Fontana Books 1243. This is another tough one to find in nice condition because of that black cover, which means that it's easily marked up. But once again, if you find one, it actually comes recommended, this one. It's a really decent adaptation. And quite an easier one to find, that you'll be pleased to hear. Now, the next one is another omnibus, and it's going to be Dracula, Prince of Darkness. Now, that is actually in the second Hammer Horror Omnibus by John Burke. You'll see there he is, Dracula, Prince of Darkness. And this second adaptation was published in 1967 by Pan, and it's Pan M223. All right. And this had a few books in it. So you had Dracula, Prince of Darkness. You then had The Plague of Zombies. Then you had Rasputin, the Mad Monk. And all of those were published in that one Hammer Horror Omnibus by the second Hammer Horror Omnibus by John Burke. Lovely cover on that one. Both of those omnibuses are actually pretty easy to get. And I think they were also reprinted with different jackets. So you might want to track those down as well. The next one we have actually is quite tricky to get in this particular edition. And it's Uncharted Seas, which was filmed as The Lost Continent, written by the very prolific Dennis Wheatley, published by Arrow Books in the UK, and this is Arrow 062. And this is a still from the movie, and if you want to get the exact movie edition, you are looking for the one which is dated, let's see, when did this one get published? This edition, 1968. So that's the one to look for if you are trying to get the Hammer Films tie-in of that one. The next one is one of Hammer's few forays into science fiction, and that's Moon 02. Now, this one was written, it says, from the story for the film by Gavin Lau, Frank Hardman, Martin Dave, adapted by John Burke again, our familiar old chum John Burke. This is nice. It's got that still from the movie. This is published by Pan. Very, very, I think it's the cusp of 1970, 69. There we are. So 1969. Nice little adaptation there. And interestingly, on that particular one, I do also have a different American edition, which was published by Signet over there with this all red and white cover. Unusual, different publishers to the British adaptation, and I guess for completists they might fancy that one as well. Now, the next one is one of the very scarce ones, which there's a few of these published by Spear in the USA, and they're all super in the UK rather, and they're all super hard to get. Particularly so because all the covers are virtually black. These are around, a cursory look on eBay, and I saw these for about £30 a copy, which was more than I was willing to pay. But this particular one is 1970. It's Spear. It was actually published in 1971, so a year after the movie. The photo there, showing Christopher Lee about to stake a guy in action there. Very, very hard to find these, and you're going to struggle to get them. It's as simple as that. Another one, a great cast there. Look at that. Christopher Lee, Dennis Waterman, Patrick Troughton. Directed by Roy Ward Baker. Classic stuff. So that's the Scars of Dracula. Now, the next one I think is possibly the rarest of them all. And that's the Fontana adaptation of The Vampire Lovers. So this one was published in 1970. Now, it's got a bit of it's got that classic cover of Christopher Lee there. He's about to stake Ingrid Pitt there in the coffin. On the back here, a bit of a racy, typical 70s cover there with Ingrid Pitt about to ravish old Madeline Smith in a scene from the movie, and this is what this film and this particular period of Hammer were like. This is rare. This is a rare book, this, and copies go for £30 plus easily. So that's The Vampire Lovers, and it can't be a coincidence that this particular adaptation, which is actually aimed more at teenage girls in America, this was also published in 1970 as well, and this is by Scholastic, if you can believe it, which is predominantly a service for schools. And it's got that typical Gothic cover, which was predominantly around 1970-71, the Gothic horror period. And this is the although not a tie-in, I can't believe this was published without the knowledge that it had just been adapted by Hammer. So there you go. Now in 1971, Spear again published Countess Dracula, and that does feature Ingrid Pitt on the cover. That's one that's slightly easier to find. The next one I haven't got, and that's also super rare, and that's Lust for a Vampire, and that's written by William Hughes. Christopher Lee front cover again, another super rare one. You've got Hands of the Ripper, which was also 1971 by Spear, and that shows Eric Porter as the Ripper. One of the slightly more common titles, but seems to still go for ridiculously big money, which I'm not prepared to pay. I'd rather enjoy the thrill of the hunt of coming across it, to be honest. And then the very final one is 1974's Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter, and that's by Hugh Enfield, and that was Fontana Books again, and that photo cover shows Horst Jansen in a scene from the movie, and that's also really scarce. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed looking through those Hammer horror movie tie-ins as much as I did. So if you have enjoyed this video, do please give it a thumbs up, and if you've not already, do please consider subscribing to the channel for regular vintage paperback and movie sort of tie-in content going forward. So thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.